I want to discuss claims made about the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick. We've been in close contact with his office at the Home Office this morning to try to get more clarity around it and just ask him whether it is true or not, what's being levelled at him. And in two separate statements, the latest has literally just dropped to us. There isn't an out-and-out denial that the thing I'm about to tell you actually happened. You interpret it your way. Obviously, I've interpreted it my way, and I'll share that with you and tell you why I've interpreted it that way. But let me just tell you the story from the start, and I will, of course, read that Home Office spokesperson's statement that's just come in after we reached out to them. Enver Solomon, who's a relatively frequent guest on the programme, CEO of the Refugee Council, said at a gathering that Mr. Jenrick, Robert Jenrick, the Immigration Minister, instructed staff as he visited a Kent asylum intake unit, so a reception centre for asylum seekers in Kent earlier this year, instructed them to make it look less welcoming. There was a welcome sign and he wanted that taken down, but more, well, I think the kindest word I can find is oddly. I would go further and say it's quite sinister, but let's stick with odd, shall we, for now. He gave the order, or instructed, whether it's an order or an instruction, of staff there to remove pictures on the wall that were designed to reassure and calm child asylum seekers, child refugees. He complained that the pictures designed for the children should be painted over, that this was a place of law enforcement, and it needed to be clear that it was a place of law enforcement and not a place of welcome. Enver Solomon said, the Immigration Minister said, pictures of cartoons and animals should be removed and that staff should make sure that they are painted over, the pictures, as they give an impression of welcoming, which Mr. Jenrick didn't want to show. Now, it seems to me that you can reassure a child or attempt to reassure a child and even their parent in the process of arriving at a Kent asylum reception centre and still have a functioning system that may or may not give them asylum. You don't need to turn everything into the harshest of harsh experiences. These people have just got off a boat in the Channel in many cases. They've already had the harshest of harsh experiences. And I think this is the same man who said that illegal immigrants, the term he used, were, cannibalising our compassion. And yesterday, just to broaden it out from Mr. Jenrick, and I'll read that statement in just a second, in that meeting of the so-called New Conservatives yesterday, there was a term used that, again, read between the lines on it, and it's pretty clear what they're talking about. Cultural security. Cultural security. Anyway, we reached out to the Home Office to get a response to Enver's claims, and this is what we were given, this statement. We do all we can to ensure children are safe, secure and supported as we urgently seek placements with a local authority for the children. All children receive a welfare interview on their arrival at accommodation, which includes questions designed to identify potential indicators of trafficking or safeguarding issues. It's good to know. Our priority is to stop the boats and disrupt the people smugglers. The government has gone further by introducing legislation which will ensure that those people arriving in the UK illegally are detained and promptly removed to their country of origin or a safe third country. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody had accused me of insisting children's paintings, or paintings for children, I'm not suggesting the children themselves have painted it, but paintings for children to reassure them on a wall of probably a prefabricated, sort of building on the shores of Kent, that was painted over to make it as unwelcoming as possible. If somebody had accused me of that, I would either deny it if it were not true, and I would take serious action against the people saying it about me, or I would explain why I thought it was important. And he's done neither. And his spokesperson at the Home Office has done neither. So I think we can safely conclude that it did happen, unless they'd like to send us another, perhaps simpler statement saying whether it did or it didn't. So what you just got there was a reiteration of government policy. And in a few minutes, I'll share with you, maybe after the break, I'll share with you some experiences I had in a refugee camp in Jordan on the Syrian border with Jordan back in 2013, I think it was. And the importance of, for children who are displaced, the importance of really quite small and simple things to help them psychologically and emotionally. The idea that even if you're ultimately going to say, I'm sorry to their mum and dad, you can't stay here, or I'm sorry, you can't stay here, we're going to help you get back to your own country or a different country. Even if you're going to say that, the idea that you can't in the meantime soothe them as children, it just seems sinister to me. How does it seem to you? And, we hear fine words. We'll hear them from Rishi Sunak later. The stuff he's written in The Sun, I think it was today. We can talk about it in relation to Just Stop Oil after 3, where he says Just Stop Oil are ruining this and breaking that and destroying this and destroying the other. Well, we'll talk about what they're destroying and what they're breaking and what they're contravening in a couple of hours, according to him. But what does this... I think this breaks something. I think the language coming out of the likes of Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick and the New Conservatives yesterday, I think it breaks something in this country. I think it breaks what we say we are, which is, largely speaking, broadly speaking, a country of decent people who, we're like any country, we've got our problems and we've got our problem people. And people who would harm children. Clearly, we know children are harmed in this country. It's no utopia for children, this country, by any means. But broadly speaking, we think of ourselves as decent, and we think of ourselves as decent and protective towards children, perhaps more than anything. So where does this lie with all of that? And how long do we have to tolerate this degradation of who we are, I wonder? I don't know. It seems to me that let's see what happens if this goes to the Supreme Court. The question of the legality. Let's remind ourselves that the appeal court found that Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives' Rwanda policy is unlawful, right? So as things stand, when asked about an alternative to that plan, all he has to say is Albania. And that is a red herring because it isn't connected to what to do about people who might end up going to Rwanda, because the people who have failed asylum from Albania are quickly sent back to Albania because it's regarded as a safe country. Not so if you're coming from a more dangerous place, say Afghanistan, for example. So do you believe that it's a real policy, this one, the Rwanda plan? Is it a real policy that they really think even, they can implement, that it can come off? I don't think they think it'll come off. I mean, if they win in the Supreme Court, you can get me to eat my hat, but I don't think they think it'll be allowed at all. It's showboating. It's posturing, it's performative. So what happens when it fails? What then? What will his answer be when you or I say, well, what about the 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 people who've come now? Are you processing them? No, not quickly enough. They and others are still waiting for months and months on end, years on end sometimes. What about those numbers? What about the fact that you keep saying stop the boats, we'll stop the boats, we'll stop the boats, but the boats are still coming? What else are you doing? What are you doing about the criminal gangs? What are you doing about them? What are you doing about creating a better policy with France on this? What are you doing about beefing up the staffing of the Home Office and the immigration system more generally? Those are really good questions, I think, really good questions to ask him. I think his Rwanda plan can be painted over every bit as quickly as the cartoons in that immigration reception centre, if truth be told. And that's what he'd like to do if it fails in the courts, just paint over it as though it never happened. But it happened. It is, as in, it's still in play. According to the Prime Minister, it's still in play.